Hello YouTube and welcome to this video on the effect of Martin Septim's death and the following Stormcrown interregnum. This video was requested by Jason, and to be honest it's really something I have talked about briefly in very much other videos, but never really in detail and about the effects. So, well, before we begin with talking about that, thank you all so much for the 20,000 subscribers. It's another milestone I never thought to cross, and yet here we all are, still talking about lore. So, with that said, place your lore hats on your head and let's talk something about the imperial politics after Martin's death. So, for starters, Martin's death ultimately led to the Stormcrown interregnum. The Stormcrown interregnum was the period of time between the death of potentate Oketo, who held the Septime Empire together, and the rise of Titus Mede, the first, who would eventually found the Mede dynasty and bring stability back to the empire. This was a period of time that completely fractured the empire. The empire fell apart and even parts of the Cyrodiil itself became independent. It all began with the end of the Oblivion Crisis, so the death of Martin Septim and subsequently the end of the Septim dynasty. The empire was now without an emperor, the binding force that held the empire together. The only body with authority left at this point was the Elder Council, led by Lord High Chancellor Oketo. Now, the Elder Council and how it works is a subject on its own, but in short, the members of this Elder Council are all representatives of the imperial provinces that come to the imperial city to convene and to represent their own interests, or the interests of their province. This group of wealthy individuals in the empire has basically always been at each other's throats with plots and schemes. It has become infamously clear that without an emperor or potentate to lead the Elder Council cannot hold together the empire, as there is no binding, unbiased force to just bind them. But it's just a fractured room of people only representing their own interests. Every time there was no emperor in history, the Elder Council would completely fracture in factions, trying to get the biggest profit out of the situation and trying to get as much power for themselves and, less power for others in the council. Elder Council rule generally just does not bring stability, since it's basically every province for himself and, there is no central authority at all at that point. And when Martin Septim died and the Septim line officially ended, there was no one who knew all of this history better than our annoyingly voiced friend, Lord High Chancellor of the Elder Council, Oketo of Firsthold. The only one left in the empire with universally recognized authority was him, and he was also someone that had proven himself during his days as Chancellor and Council member to be someone concerned with all issues of everyone and not only his own. He was universally respected in the empire and a close confidant of Emperor Uriel Septim VII, the last really ruling monarch of the empire. Oketo knew that the Elder Council was a mismatch of interests and that, for all terms and purposes, it was a time bomb. Sooner or later, if there was no central leader that came out for everyone's interest and not just his own, the Elder Council would fracture again and the centuries-old empire would collapse like the empires had done before it. So he did what he could, and during the Oblivion Crisis he tried to keep all the provinces in line by having his attention focused on all the provinces, trying to hold them together. This got him some, very strong criticism in Cyrodiil, because some in Cyrodiil actually saw him as just abandoning the Heartland. But in general his methods were applauded, as it held the imperial provinces together without an emperor in these difficult times. After the Oblivion Crisis, he tried to pick a successor emperor and get a new dynasty on the throne to bind the empire together, but none of his picks were accepted by the Elder Council, and cracks were starting to slowly show in the empire, as Black Marsh officially declared its independence quickly after the end of the Septim dynasty. And as the Elder Council was getting increasingly fractured and harder to work with, High Chancellor Oketo reverted himself to the only option he had left. He proposed to install himself as potentate emperor until the empire was healthy once again, and then later choose a new emperor. The Elder Council accepted, as his selfless acts during the Oblivion Crisis and after the Oblivion Crisis, and his great reputation as an unbiased policymaker had earned him a lot of respect and a lot of confidence in the council. This saved the empire in all respects, as With Oketo as potentate, the empire once again had a binding figurehead. If he hadn't done this, the empire would have, well, fractured a few years earlier. He made great progress in healing the relation with the provinces, uniting the Elder Council and healing Tamriel after the Oblivion Crisis. Unfortunately, this was not without struggle, as during this period the Red Mountain erupted and, well, the Thalmor rose increasingly more prominent. As an Altmer himself, he saw the danger the Thalmor posed to the Empire, and he started to actively fight the Thalmor and try to keep them out of positions of power in the Somerset Isles. Unfortunately, this would lead to his, well, untimely death, as Potentate Oketo was assassinated by an alleged Thalmor assassin. This threw the Empire in complete chaos. For all terms and purposes, High Chancellor Oketo, or Potentate Oketo later, had been the only binding thing that would bind the Empire together, and the only one with universally recognized authority to get anything done in the broken Empire. He had been well on track in repairing the Empire, but not far enough. Quickly after his death, the Elder Council quickly fractured once again, and every faction in the Elder Council would fight over personal power and try to install their own puppet emperor, either through diplomacy or they would try just conquer the Imperial City, which, well, greatly weakened the city and the Imperial Legion defending it. The most prominent and last puppet emperor during this time was Thulz the Gibbering, a sorcerer emperor who was basically a puppet of the Elder Council. The faction of the Elder Council at that moment in charge, at the end of the Stormcrown Interregnum. During this time, the Empire has completely fallen apart. Elsewhere, who had proclaimed partial independence, which wasn't really recognized by the Empire before, now took its full independence. And several other provinces followed suit by declaring independence, even though it wasn't really recognized by anyone. Some other provinces like Skyrim and High Rock would become rogue provinces, being empire in name but not bowing to, well, the commands of the puppet emperors or the fractured and fighting Elder Council. Even Cyrodiil itself, the heartland of imperial authority, completely fractured, with Bravil and Leyawiin actually becoming independent city-states who would fight each other over trade profits. And, well, Colovia, the easternmost counties of Cyrodiil, became its own kingdom eventually, under King Titus Mede. The petty emperors had only some authority in the imperial city, and, well, that's it. Just like the Elder Council, they hadn't really have any authority left on any of Tamriel. This period of time would be called the Stormcrown Interregnum and would end when finally the Kingdom of Colovia would annex the imperial city, with its king, Titus Mede, swaying a majority of the Elder Council to following and, well, instate himself as emperor. Now, with the backing of the remaining Elder Council members, Mede would then reconquer the majority of imperial lands. But that is a story of another video. This video, my video on the Mede Dynasty. Watch that one if you wish. It's really an enjoyable watch and really explains the whole transition period. I even have some of the information I have here in that video, but less fleshed out. However, I wonder, could all of this completely falling apart of the Empire, could it have been prevented? Even if Oketo died, could the Elder Council factions have ruled the Empire in peace instead of completely fracturing? Well, no. The Elder Council might have been able to do it in a healthy empire, but in an empire that was completely broken and damaged by the Oblivion Crisis, each piece of resources was, well, highly valued to repair your own homeland. And a lot of the rivaling factions, all looking to violently obtain said resources, isn't really the perfect thing to rule an empire. And that's why you need a binding central figure with unbiased authority to equally distribute the resources to rebuild the empire. Now, as long as Oketo would be dead, there would be no one to carry on in his position with success, as nobody that would fill his shoes would have the same kind of respect and service to the empire, and would always instead serve his own province and never have the respect to, well, work with the broken Elder Council. But what if Oketo didn't die? Well, that's a highly interesting scenario, and one that is very complicated and not very predictable, as we don't know what could have happened. As even Oketo says that the provinces are at each other's throats at the end of the Oblivion Crisis, and even he had to swallow back Blackmarsh and Elsweyr independence. If anything, if Oketo hadn't died, I think that the Empire would have been better off, because the Thalmor would not be as powerful as they are in our timeline, and he might have been able to utilize the time of infighting to actually heal the Empire instead of that there being infighting and having it be peaceful. But then again, more provinces might have followed Blackmarsh and Elsweyr so we don't know what would have happened. If anything, the transition might have been less warlike and more peaceful, but then again, that's mostly guesswork. That said, I hope you liked this video. If you did, like, subscribe, do those things. We have 20,000 subscribers right now, so I'm probably doing something right, so why not join? Anyway, if you want personal contact with me, there's my Discord and Instagram in the description. Also in the description is my Patreon if you want to support me in a more personal way. There's all sorts of neat things on my Patreon and you should definitely check it out even if you don't want to support me. Yeah, and I think that's it. Oh, and by the way, on my Instagram I'm doing 50 days of lore, so every day I do one lore post for 50 days. I'm not even half yet, so it's worth following and checking the lore posts if you want more lore outside of videos. And with that said, I will leave you all at this, and I will see you all in the next lore video. Bye bye.